When you're ignored, it's as if the universe has conspired to place a mirror in front of you, one that reflects not your physical form, but the depths of your emotions. There's a rawness to it, isn't there? A certain ache, a certain vulnerability that makes you question not only the intentions of others, but the very ground beneath your feet. You see, human beings are storytellers. And when someone dismisses us, when they turn away or fail to acknowledge our presence, our minds race to fill the gap. Why, we ask, why am I not worthy of their attention? What have I done but pause for a moment, feel the weight of those questions, and notice how they sit heavily on your chest? And then ask yourself, what if the answers you're seeking are not to be found in their silence, but in your own willingness to sit with this discomfort? Because here's the thing, when someone ignores you, it's like the wind blowing through an empty valley. There's a sound to it, a kind of echo that isn't really sound at all, but a deep, almost primal awareness that you've been left unseen. And that hurts. Oh, how it hurts. But it also makes you stop. It makes you feel. And in that feeling, there is something profound, something utterly human. Most of us, when ignored, we run. We distract ourselves. We scroll through our phones, watch television, talk to someone else, anything to avoid the sting of being unseen. But what if, instead of running, you stood still? Imagine standing in a crowded room, everyone talking, laughing, and moving around you while you remain rooted in place. People brush past you, their gazes skimming over your face as if you're nothing more than a shadow. You're left with yourself, just you. That's the moment most of us dread, isn't it? But what if that moment isn't a curse? What if it's an invitation? When someone ignores you, it peels back the layers of pretense we carry like armor. We're all so busy trying to be seen, to be validated, to be important, that we forget what lies underneath. And being ignored, it's like someone yanking away that armor. Suddenly there you are, standing naked before yourself, vulnerable. And in that vulnerability is the essence of who you are. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's painful. But it's real. And the truth is, we spend so much of our lives avoiding this very moment, the moment where we are truly deeply alone with our thoughts. In the silence of being ignored, there's a rhythm, a beat you can't hear if you're always looking outward. It's the heartbeat of your own existence, calling you to remember who you are beyond the noise of approval or rejection. You might think, but I don't want this, I don't want to feel this way. Of course you don't. Nobody does. But there is a certain beauty in letting yourself feel it. You're alive after all. Alive enough to notice the sting, alive enough to ask these questions, alive enough to wonder what it all means. And that's the paradox of being ignored. It feels like death, but it's actually a whisper of life reminding you that you're here right now, awake and aware. When people ignore you, they're offering you a space, an empty, echoing space that only you can fill. They're giving you an opportunity to ask, what do I want to place here? How do I fill this void? And maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't to fill it at all, but to sit with it. To let the emptiness stretch out like a vast canvas, to feel its edges, its contours, and to realize that it isn't really empty at all. It's full of possibilities, full of the potential for you to rediscover what it means to simply be. You see, being ignored can become a kind of meditation if you let it. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself that are often hidden by the noise of daily life. It forces you to look inward, to ask questions like, why do I crave their attention so much? What am I hoping to gain? And as you sit with these questions, you begin to see that the answers aren't out there, they never were. They're here within you, waiting to be heard, waiting for you to stop running and start listening. And so when someone ignores you, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't let the discomfort push you away. Stay with it. Feel it. Let it wash over you, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Because in that moment of rejection, there is a doorway. And on the other side of that doorway lies a deeper understanding of who you are. An understanding that doesn't rely on anyone else to see you, because you finally learned to see yourself. It's a strange thing, isn't it, to feel the sting of being overlooked and wonder if somehow, in some way you've fallen short. The immediate impulse is to blame yourself, to think, what did I do wrong? How have I failed? But that in itself is a kind of trap, a self-absorbed loop that only deepens the hurt. To truly understand why someone might ignore you, you have to step out of your own shadow. You have to see the world not as you wish it to be, but as it is, flawed and imperfect and full of people stumbling their way through it. When someone ignores you, it's often not about you at all. It's about them, their preoccupations, their fears, their inadequacies. People are complex creatures burdened by their own private struggles. Maybe they don't have the emotional bandwidth to notice you. Maybe they're consumed by their own insecurities, unable to reach out because they're too caught up in their internal battles. It's hard to see this in the moment because the pain of being ignored blinds you to their humanity. But pause for a second. Really pause. Think about the last time you overlooked someone, not out of malice, but because you were too tired, too busy, too lost in your own thoughts. The truth is, most of us aren't very good at being present, and that includes the people who hurt us by their silence. There's also another layer to this. Some people ignore you because they see in you something they fear in themselves. It might be your confidence, your ambition, or even your vulnerability. These traits, instead of drawing them closer, make them uncomfortable, and their instinct is to turn away. It's not logical, but then again, human behavior rarely is. We project our fears and inadequacies onto others without realizing it, and in doing so, we create distance where there could have been connection. To be ignored in this sense is to be misunderstood, and to be misunderstood is one of the deepest pains we can experience, but it's also one of the most common. But let's go deeper still. Sometimes people ignore you not out of malice or fear, but out of simple disconnection. They're not tuned into you because their world is filled with noise, work, deadlines, personal crises, the endless stream of demands pulling at their attention. In an age where everyone is constantly distracted, being ignored is often a side effect of the modern condition. It's not personal, even though it feels deeply personal. The person who fails to see you might not even see themselves clearly, let alone anyone else. And yet knowing all this doesn't make it hurt any less, does it? The pain is real and it's valid. But understanding the reasons behind it can soften the blow. It can help you take a step back and say, this isn't about me. This is about them. And that shift in perspective, it's powerful. It allows you to move from a place of hurt to a place of compassion. Compassion for yourself, yes, but also for the people who, in their own flawed way, are doing the best they can. Because that's what we're all doing, isn't it? Stumbling through life, trying to make sense of it all, and sometimes failing to notice the beauty standing right in front of us. Pain is an inevitable part of life, and it's inescapable. But there's something about the pain of being ignored that cuts uniquely, doesn't it? It's a silent pain, a quiet ache that lingers in the background of your thoughts, casting shadows over your self-esteem and sense of belonging. And in that moment, when you're left wondering, why me, it's easy to feel small, even invisible. But I'll tell you, this pain, especially this kind of pain, carries within it a profound seed of growth. The question is whether you'll water it. You see, when you're ignored, it can feel like a rejection of who you are. But rejection at its core is not always a definitive statement about your worth. It's often a reflection of the world as it is, not as it could or should be. People get lost in their own chaos, their own struggles, and their own insecurities, and sometimes that chaos blinds them to the value of what's right in front of them. So when someone ignores you, the truth is, it might not even be about you at all. And yet the pain it causes is undeniably yours to bear. Now here's the thing about pain, it's a signal. It's your body, your mind, and your spirit crying out for attention. Not from others, but from you. Pain is like a compass. It points you toward the areas of your life that need care, growth, and transformation. When you're ignored, it's a chance to ask yourself hard questions. Why does this hurt so much? What does this reveal about my own expectations, my own vulnerabilities? And as you explore those questions, you start to uncover truths about yourself that you might otherwise have avoided. Because let's be honest, growth isn't comfortable. It's messy and it's painful. But it's also necessary. Being ignored can force you to confront the parts of yourself that crave external validation, that rely on the approval of others to feel whole. And while it's natural to want to be seen and acknowledged, there's a deeper strength that comes from learning to see and acknowledge yourself first. That's where resilience is born. In the quiet moments of reflection, in the space between being overlooked and deciding what to do next. When you take that pain, the pain of being unseen, unheard, dismissed, and you sit with it, you start to transform it. You start to realize that your worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. Your value doesn't diminish. We live in a world that constantly measures us. From the moment we're children, we're graded, judged, ranked, taught to believe that our value lies in how others perceive us. But think about that for a moment. If your worth depends entirely on the judgment of someone else, then it's as fleeting as their attention. And attention, as we all know, is fickle. It flits from one thing to another, never staying long enough to truly grasp what it sees. So if you tie your self-worth to being noticed, you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of instability. But here's the truth: your value isn't something that anyone else can bestow upon you. It isn't a gift handed down by the approval of others. It's intrinsic. It's inherent. It's as much a part of you as the air you breathe. And yet so many of us forget this. We chase validation as if it's the key to our happiness, never realizing that the lock was never outside of us to begin with. When you recognize your own value, it's like stepping into a room filled with light after being in the dark for far too long. The shadows, the doubts, the insecurities, the fears, they don't vanish completely, but they lose their power over you because you've seen what's real. And what's real is that you are enough exactly as you are. This isn't some feel-good platitude, it's a hard truth. Hard because it demands that you stop looking outward for your worth and start looking inward. And that's not easy. It takes courage, it takes effort, but it's worth it. Imagine standing before a mirror, not to check your appearance, but to truly see yourself. To look into your own eyes and ask, who am I beyond what others think of me? Who am I when no one is watching? Those questions. In life, being ignored can feel like one of the deepest rejections, shaking your confidence and making you question your worth. But it is in these moments of silence and isolation that we are gifted with a rare opportunity to grow. When others fail to acknowledge you, it's not always a reflection of your value, but rather of their limitations, distractions, or insecurities. Instead of letting their indifference diminish you, use it as a mirror to see yourself more clearly. The pain of being unseen is real, but it holds within it a lesson to stop seeking validation outside of yourself and to start recognizing your intrinsic worth. True self-worth isn't tied to fleeting attention or external recognition. It's rooted in understanding that you have value simply because you exist, regardless of whether others see it or not. This realization is liberating. It allows you to shift from dependence on others to inner resilience, giving you the strength to navigate the world with confidence and purpose. The silence of being ignored invites you to reflect, to ask, who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly stand for? These are not easy questions, but they lead to profound self-discovery. When you stop chasing the approval of others and learn to validate yourself, you step into a power that is unshakable. You no longer fear rejection, and you no longer need to prove your worth to anyone. You realize that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. So when the world turns away, when voices grow quiet and eyes look past you, don't despair. Instead, pause. Use the stillness to discover the strength and beauty within. Embrace the journey of learning to see yourself, for in doing so, you'll find a deeper sense of purpose, clarity, and fulfillment, one that no one can take away.